You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we're here to talk about the World Test Championship. This Wednesday, the two big boys of Test cricket, South Africa and Australia, will square off at Lords to determine who the champion is. That's part one. Then in part two, we'll be taking a dismal look. We'll be taking a good look back at some dismal predictions from the IPL.
There's definitely something dismal in there.
Yeah, I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Red Brown. How you doing, Max?
Hello. Very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to Wednesday because, of course, we will be there at Lords, the glorious Lords, for the first day of the World Test Championship. So I'm excited to get some live Test cricket under my belt for the summer of 2025.
I think it's the only match I've got tickets to at the moment. I might see if I can get some India-England tickets later. At the moment, it's... In fact, you know what? I've got day 5 Oval tickets for England v India, but who knows whether that will actually happen. But yeah, no, I am looking forward to it. That's Wednesday. If anyone is about, actually, we'll start the show with this. If anyone is about and wants to meet me, Max, and Ross, I think we've already got one engagement, theoretically, in the calendar.
Get your name in the diary early. It's filling up.
Yeah. Get in touch with the podcast. Let us know on YouTube in the comments or email us. Is it thecricketpod@gmail.com? Let us an email. Also, you can sign up to support the podcast, patreon.com/thecricketpod. And you can find the link to our BetterHelp landing page. Also, in the show notes, Max, World Test Championship final. We've got a few things on the docket, as it were, here. We've got South African and Australian selection questions. We've got a question of whether South Africa even deserve to be in the final. We've got predictions. Where do you want to start? What's your favourite talking point?
Why don't we start? Why don't we start with the question of, well, how the two teams got there, I suppose, because that leads us nicely on to talking about South Africa's place there, without wanting to, prejudice what we might think one way or another.
We can do that. Do you want to talk us through it? You're usually the summariser.
Absolutely. So, obviously, top two in the table. That's how you get to the final. That's the rules.
That is
South Africa. South Africa topped the table with a win percentage just shy of 70, ahead of Australia with a 67.5% win rate, because that's how the table is determined, the percentage of games you've won when everyone plays a different number of games against different opposition in a tournament that's slightly confusing and hard for people to get their heads around. But that's how it works, and that's how they got to where they are. But their journeys were fairly different, and I think what speaks to that more than anything is the amount of cricket that each team played. Australia won more tests in the World Test Championship than South Africa played, because Australia played 19 and South Africa played 12. 12 is the joint fewest with Bangladesh in terms of games played. So that's really how we ended up where we were. South Africa started off with a 1-1 home series against India, which was really good. There was a game with an absolute nonsense pitch with the ball flying everywhere, which was quite enjoyable, and also that was the second game, wasn't it? And the Boxing Day Test back in 2023, and that basically said everything you need to know about South Africa's Test calendar, I suppose, for this World Test Championship cycle, which was we wanted more of it, because that was a really good series, and it should have been at least a 4-game series, because that would have been quite exciting. They then lost 2-0 away in New Zealand when they sent like a third choice team, because it was in the middle of the SA20 and it was all a bit weird. And then they roared back to win 7 of their next 8. But that's where all the maths comes in, obviously, because they were only playing 2 match series, and they ended up managing to get their place at the top. Australia had a lot more cricket to get through. It included games against the neighbours, New Zealand. It included a very exciting BGT as well, where India threatened to pull off an unlikely win. So it was a bit more lengthened and maybe more challenging, you could argue, picture for Australia to get there. The other thing about South Africa is a lot of their tougher games were at home. India at home, they had Pakistan at home. Bangladesh away and Sri Lanka away. Tough assignments, but that's why, Jack, people are questioning whether they think South Africa really deserve to be in the World Test Champion final.
Well, look, let's deal with that then. I think that you can fairly argue that South Africa had an easy schedule, and I think you can fairly argue that playing just 2-match series can be beneficial. What I also think is pretty much indisputable is that none of the teams from third down in that table have done anything that suggests that they are actually better than South Africa. Now, if you're an Australian and you're saying we should be top of the table, we've played harder games and we've got better results overall, and the table has us second, and we feel that our rightful place is top of the table, I can hear that argument. But I'm sorry, I'm not having that from anyone else. I'm not having it from India, who lost 3-0 at home against New Zealand, and over this cycle didn't travel that well. I mean, they got beaten fair and square by Australia.
They did.
They were a little bit unlucky, I think, with a rain-off against West Indies. They won that 1-0 away, and it's 1-1 away in South Africa is creditable, but it's not fantastic. They're finishing third. New Zealand, a great result away in India, but got battered by Australia at home. Got beaten pretty comfortably by England at home. And then on their travels, where did they go? That 1-1 away in Bangladesh. That's okay. Losing 2-0 away in Sri Lanka. That's not okay. Like, that's not a team. No. That's not a team that are better than South Africa. I'm sorry. Neither of those teams are better than South Africa.
Yeah. If anything, the next closest team would be England, who are down because they got docked a ton of points for playing really slowly. But then I'm not saying England should be in the final either, because that's the
reality. If you were going to look at it from through a purely a results lens, the third best team in this cycle has been England, and if you work out the points, they would be above India. They didn't really understand or follow the rules. It's not really clear exactly what England's position is on slow over rates. That's obviously made a massive dent in it. But even if you give them all their points back and you put them up on 51.5 points, or 51.5% of the available points, which is how this has worked out. Let's have a look at their results. 2-2 in the Ashes. Great series, fantastic cricket, but not a win. That's a drawn series at home. It's not ideal. They lost the test to Sri Lanka at home the summer after. That's not fantastic. And then on their travels, got beaten pretty fairly by India, pretty fairly by Pakistan, and got a good result in New Zealand. Like, that's not. It's hard to look at that and say, there is a team that are better than South Africa, even if the ICC's Test match rankings would tell you that. So I think, the way it's fallen, it's handy if you're South Africa and you don't have to play England or Australia, who are probably the two best teams when it comes to travelling to South African conditions, and also obviously two of the nearest contenders. But that's how the schedule works. And South Africa, what did you say? They won 7 of the last 8 matches.
Yeah.
I mean, South Africa have got there, including basically conceding an entire series.
Yeah.
It's a good effort from them. And I don't think you can take too much away from it. I think over this cycle, probably pretty clearly the best two teams have made it. Is that a fair answer?
I think that's a very fair summary, Jack. I agree with you completely on that, which doesn't make much excitement for reasoned debate, but that is where we stand.
Should we look at some of the teams then, or the teams? We'll start with Australia, I think, here, Max. We've just done a bit on South Africa, so we'll bounce back to Australia. Australia have got a little bit of a decision to make, and it seems like they've been leaking the direction that decision will be made to the press. And that's basically around who opens the batting, whether they go back to, because I think they went away from Sam Constance for a little bit, or whether they go with Marnus Labuschagne, and also how Cameron Green fits into this 11. Now, what we kind of know, I think, is that Pat Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, and Lyon are going to be the bowlers. It's a little bit harsh.
It's a difficult decision to make, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you could go for Boland over Stark, I think, at Lords specifically, but I don't think
at Lords
Australia
not against England.
Yeah. I think Carey will be the wicketkeeper. Obviously, Steve Smith will be in there, and Travis Head will be fine. And I think they'll stick with Bo Webster. So it is, and Khawaja as well. I think that kind of goes without saying. So it is a debate around Constus and Labuschagne and Green and who bats where. It seems, Max, that Australia are going to go with Khawaja, Labuschagne, Green as their top three. What do you think about that? Are you disappointed that we won't be seeing Sam Constus in a couple of days?
Yeah, I kind of am actually, because that was a hell of an announcement to his Test career, reverse ramping Bumrah repeatedly. So I wouldn't mind seeing some of that, leveled at Kahisa Rabada. I think that would be an equally tasty thing to watch. But probably, well, they've gone for the safe pick, haven't they? Let's face it. But the safe pick is still someone who isn't really an opening batter and someone who isn't a number 3 playing in those positions. So, it's safe in terms of the personnel, right? You got the wizened old head of Marnus Labuschagne and all his eccentricity and the runs that come with it. And Cameron Green has been scoring hundreds for fun at Gloucestershire in the county champ this year on his return from a back injury, and he's obviously in just as a batter because he's not ready to bowl yet. And he seems, he said himself, he's perfectly happy to bat number 3 because he's did it for most of his, young youth career. So he's fine. He's fine with that. Marnus Labuschagne opening the batting, probably less happy about having to do that, especially at Lords, where if Australia get put in to start and the ball is hooping around as it sometimes does in the first hour or so at Lords, then maybe he will be cursing that decision. But it's the safe pick, isn't it? And it's probably the right one. It would be fun to see some Sam Constus, but I don't think, aside from a little bit of meme cricket, that it's necessarily a sensible ploy in a final. But
yeah, I think I basically agree with the approach that they're taking. But I think one of the things that's sort of unspoken about this, or one of the things that will be kind of tricky about this, is it's a very, very early in the year match when it comes to English condition. Now, it's been dry-ish, apart from the kind of last few days where it's going to be, or it has been really wet. And so traditionally, Lords earlier in the season can be a little bit of a handful. And I think if I was Australia, I would want to go with the players that have the most experience in those conditions. Now, Cameron Green has done like a sort of a mini apprenticeship, I think, at Gloucestershire in the build up to this match. Labuschagne has obviously been on Ashes tours and has played a lot for Glamorgan, so probably a little bit more familiar with the conditions. And Constus, I don't know, maybe he's played some club cricket at some point in England. Maybe he hasn't even done that. And so I think Australia, if memory serves, moved away from Constus for their tour of South Sri Lanka immediately after the Border Castle Trophy. And I think that tells you that they don't consider him the finished article when it comes to all global conditions. So I would be a little bit surprised if they went away from that. Also, Australia do like picking known quantities. Like, it is a thing that it has been one of their selection hallmarks, I think, over the last little while. And even when they dip into the reserves and call someone up, often it is an experienced cricketer. By Webster, for example, Scott Boland, for example, over maybe the flashy new thing or the shiny new options. Constus was almost a little bit of a left field selection in terms of their recent track record in that area. So I'd be really surprised if he plays, basically.
Yeah. So it was Travis Head opening the batting alongside Khawaja in Sri Lanka, which is quite a change of angle from Australia, bearing in mind they when they played in India, was it last year or I think last summer, February last year, where they were talking about not even picking Travis Head for the tour of India because he's not very good against spin, and then here he is opening the batting for Australia in Sri Lanka. So a change of pace for them there. But yeah, I think it makes sense, right? It's go with the guys who've played in English cricket. It's a one-off game, you know. There's plenty of time for Sam Constance to come and excite us in the future. And when it comes down to a one-off game, you probably go with your wise heads, don't you?
Yeah. Let's move on to South Africa then, because there's some selection questions here as well, and they've. It's not like they had a very, very, very settled team. It was fairly settled, but they cycled through a fair number of players.
Often because of injury.
I think, yeah, there's probably a fair amount of that, but also their batting sort of fluctuates quite wildly in terms of output, and so nobody is ever really sort of rock solid in place. I think we can be fairly sure that Aidan Markram and Rickleton are going to be the openers.
Yeah.
And then I think we can be fairly sure that Temba Bavuma will be batting at 4. And then I think we know that Kyle Verreynne will be the keeper. And then I think with the bowling, Marco Jansen, Kagiso Rabada, Maharaj are pretty much locks.
Yeah.
But then there are question marks about how they fill out the rest of that 11. Max, you've got your ear to the ground. What do you think a likely South African 11 might be in a couple of days' times?
That's a tough one. I think. I mean, you've got Vian Mulder and Corbin Bosch are the two, two all-rounder options. I reckon it'll be probably Vian Mulder coming in because he's sort of off the back of some good form at the end of the cycle. And then I suppose it's one other seamer, isn't it? And the options there are between Ngidi and Dane Patterson. And again, it's like I don't know. It's a bit of a toss up, really. I think it'll probably be Ngidi. Yeah, he's probably leading it. I don't know where that leaves us in terms of an 11. But Tristan Stubbs is the other guy who you would expect to be in there, and it will probably be Tony DeZorzi missing out from the top order.
I think so. Yeah. So I think we've got Markram and Rickleton. Stubbs probably bats 3. I kind of wouldn't be surprised if they, for some reason, went with Tony DeZorzi. Like, I would probably pick Stubbs, but whatever. Bavuma, then I think Beddingham will be 5. But again, I don't think that's a lock. But he has been. If anyone, he's not like torn up trees or anything, but he's
been the most consistent.
Fairly consistently picked and fairly consistently in that number 5 slot. So I would be a little bit surprised if they went away from him, but it could happen. Verreynne, then I kind of agree. I think they'll go with like a double all-rounder, if we call Marco Jansen an all-rounder, which I suppose he is. I mean, he's got some good runs. But yeah, Mulder, Jansen. And then I think it'll be Rabada, Maharaj and Patterson.
Yeah.
Not Ngidi. But I don't know. I don't know if that will be the case. Like there is definitely room for at least one of those selection calls to go a different way. And I don't necessarily think they'd be wrong. I think they're quite marginal. We spend a lot of time in cricket focusing on those margins because there's no substitutions and sort of in some senses no tactics as well. We spend a lot of time focusing on like who is better, the 11th best player or the 12th best player. Really, it probably this match, if we were going to like boil it down to what it, who are going to be the key players, it probably comes down to how well Marco Jansen and Rabada bowl.
Yeah,
from a South African perspective.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if the winning condition is decided between picking Ngidi or Patterson. Doesn't feel like the coin flip, does it?
No, yeah. I mean, like if we're here in a week's time saying, "Oh, South Africa, they didn't win the tournament, they didn't win the World Test Championship final," I think it is far more likely we're saying Rabada didn't bowl very well than if only they had gone with Ngidi. Like that's sort of what I'm saying there. I think it'll be interesting. Yeah. How do you see this match playing out, Max?
So I well, obviously Australia are the favourites, aren't they? And the noise that South Africa have been making and Bavuma has been making is about that, we're probably underdogs, but I don't think we're as far away as everyone thinks, just because we don't have the big names, etc. Which is maybe fair, but what concerns me is that if you look at the sides that they're going to go into, that are going to go into this game with the bat, I think you can probably fairly say that the best players on both sides will be in the seam bowling side of things. Jansen and Rabada for South Africa, and the trio of Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood for Australia. They are top tier. You only think of people like Jasprit Bumrah who can hold a candle in world cricket at the moment. So that's going to be the main firepower of both those sides. And then you think about the batting they're going to come up against, and Australia's batting is pretty solid. Like it's not the it's not the unbeatable Stephen Smith of past years, where you do think that you are never going to get him out. And the same for Marnus Labuschagne, who'll be playing slightly out of position. But that Australia lineup probably going to go in with. There's not a guy in there who averages less than 35. And you look at that South Africa lineup, and there's maybe two that average over 35. And that's the thing. Like, that part of that is South Africa swinging wildly between scoring runs and scoring no runs, but it does make it a lot more. There's a lot more trepidation around that South Africa batting lineup, and I think there's a lot more for that Australia bowling lineup to get at than the other way around. So I think South Africa probably have, a fair tag as underdogs, but they have the tools to win the game because they have Rabada and they have Marco Jansen, and they have batters who can score runs. They just don't do it as often as the Aussies. Also, Australia's record at Lords is nonsense, and even going back to 1877 or however, they've got a better record, a comfortably better record than England at Lords. I think it's like their win to loss ratio is like 2.5 or something at Lords, and
that is good.
South Africa not great at Lords. But that is.
But since South Africa's readmission, they've won 7 out of 8 matches. South Africa, or not lost, or only lost 1. I think that's right. It's South Africa in our lifetimes have also a very, very strong record. And at Lords, and when they were kind of dismantled a little bit by Bazball Mark 1, they still managed to tear through England twice at Lords. And I would say as well, like, Australia's good record at Lords
heavily weighted to the 90s.
Yeah, and also, like, you got to play some pretty dismal England teams.
Yeah.
Very regularly. Like, it's yeah. So I don't know whether the historical bias is too far in Australia's favour there. Like, if I was looking at the two teams, I think overall Australia's team is better, and I think I'm not fully into bowlers are the only important players in your team camp when it comes to Test cricket. So I know there's a little bit of a continuum there, isn't there? Like, I think you would acknowledge that bowling is more important, and I think that Pat Cummins and Hazelwood and Stark and Lyon are more likely to solve whatever the bowling problem is that they encounter than South Africa, even accepting the fact that Marco Jansen and Rabada, would easily stand up to that bowling attack. I think after that, there is a little bit more doubt.
A bit of a drop off. Yeah. I do think, though, with South Africa's openers, they're more settled, right? Aidan Markram, Rickleton is one of the guys he's the only guy, I think, in that expected lineup that averages over 40 with the bat in tests for South Africa. He'll be there, and Markram's done it for a while, and they've got experience and pedigree at the top of the order. Whereas Australia, Labuschagne doesn't do it very often and probably doesn't want to be doing it, and Khawaja is the wrong side of 38, as they would say, and he's still doing a job there, but there is a question about how much longer he's going to be able to do that job. So for South Africa, a couple of early wickets for those two, and you're suddenly in at, Cameron Green, who's batting at 3 and coming back to international Test cricket for the first time in a while, and Steve Smith, who maybe is a little bit more fragile than he has been in the past. If you can get those two early, then well in the game, South Africa. So, it's not like there's no routes for them to win, but I would have my money on Australia, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with that to round off this discussion. I think if you were offered even odds on both outcomes, I think you're taking Australia, aren't you? But I do think I've got the actual odds up, and South Africa are 4-1, and I think that's
worth a punt.
Yeah, I think there is all sorts of things can happen. Lords as well is pretty unpredictable. Like if you can get like day one conditions that are virtually unplayable, and then day two conditions which might be like some of the best in the world when it comes to batting.
Yeah. You also have to remember that it's on a stupid fucking slope.
Yeah, well,
really
yeah, this too, and I think if Australia bat first, then there is the possibility that something pretty spectacular happens quite quickly. Up against Rabada and Marco Jansen. Equally, it could happen the other way around. Like it's but we will see. I think the toss could be quite important. I preferred this match when it was at the Oval, I think.
Yeah.
Plus,
remember we got to go to the Oval and not Lords, and the Oval is better.
Yeah. You are allowed to bring a bottle of wine into Lords, though.
That's true, though. That's true. Yeah. What will you be bringing? Are you going to be going for fizz, or are you going to go for like an afternoon red?
I'm going to go with something South African, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like from something from the Stellenbosch region.
Nice Chenin Blanc.
Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. You?
Well, now you've said that, maybe I'm thinking I'll go something Australian. See if I can find a sparkling Shiraz or something.
Okay.
I was a big fan of that.
Sparkling Shiraz. I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
My uncle lives in Australia, and he's sent brought a bottle over with him from time to time. Might be a little bit tight to get him to send one over by Wednesday, but I'll see what I can find.
I will say this, if someone said what bottle of wine would you like? I think a Barossa Valley Shiraz is, but a red one. None of this fucking funky shit. I think that might be.
It's still red.
On my list.
It's still red.
High up on my list.
It's just fizzy.
Arguably, this is the battle of the two best wine producers in world cricket. I know New Zealand has a shout, but I think it's a little bit more one-dimensional in New Zealand. So I think in terms of range, South Africa v Australia probably the
wine derby.
The viticulture derby, exactly. Look, like I said, if you are heading along on Wednesday specifically, do let us know, and maybe we'll see if we can share a glass of Australian Shiraz together, or a Chenin Blanc from South Africa. As is your want. Look, Max, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and we're going to round off the IPL, which is quite, in cricketing terms, feels like years ago, but actually did only end 6 days or 5 days. Yeah, and look, we'll be back in a moment.